have our next presentation, and then we'll take some questions. Nick Moe, I've known Nick for a long time. We started working on the fair share and SB 21, and we didn't have a lot of success. But like Elise says, you know, if you're in the kitchen, in fact, the unions have a saying that says if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to impress on people, because it's true, absolutely. Like she said, if she would have had the support because of numbers, and you know, legislators are numbers, then we wouldn't be in the state of affairs that we are now, especially with education. But back to Nick. Nick has been around forever as far as I'm concerned. He's either helping somebody or helping a cause, and that's when I first met Nick. And since then, I keep an eye on him. He's not in my district, but he's right next door. So, anyway, Nick Moe.
Thank you, Angel. And so my name is Nick Moe. I am the bold, independent, pro-choice candidate running in West Anchorage to bring change to Juneau. And I would like to start by first thanking Angel and Cal. Cal, I think you deserve a special shout out for all of your work, and what a talented guy, years of public service to our country, our community. Thank you so much for being here and doing your thing. We all stand on the shoulders of Angel and a lot of people in this room. Big thank you to Mary. I know Mary Weiss is for organizing this forum, bringing everybody together, and to have this opportunity to talk about the issues. What an awesome opportunity. I also want a special shout out to Elise, Representative Galvin, a fellow independent, nonpartisan. Elise and I worked together this last legislative session to use her leadership in House Finance to fund a huge amount of money, $7.5 million for child care grants and early education. And I can't thank you enough, Elise, for your leadership and standing strong for kids. And I was honored to be a part of that as well. So I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, tell you a little bit about my leadership and why I'm running and why I am optimistic about this race. So a little bit about me. I'm a fourth generation Alaskan, and my family came from Minnesota, so we're pretty excited about the Tim Waltz. Did anybody see our future vice president's speech? What a barn burner. My mother-in-law Carol is here. Shout out to Carol. She's a lifelong Democrat and retired teacher. We both watched that speech before this, and we're fired up. And I am a proud parent of two kiddos in the Anchorage School District, and my son Martin just started kindergarten today. It was his first day, and Grandma's here for it, and we're excited. I'll tell you about my fourth grader Cora here in a little bit as well. But I'm proud to be running as an independent to do the things that Representative Galvin just mentioned, to work across party lines and to build the coalition we need, a veto-proof majority to get education passed and to help fight against the special interests. It's necessary, and wouldn't it be great to get gavels to some of our friends and supporters who've been fighting the good fight for years? And so I'm proud to be, and there are many other independents in Juneau, independents like Representative Calvin Schrage. We just elected an amazing independent at the local level, Suzanne LaFrance. And I feel like if we can change our city and get our city on the right track, let's do it this fall. Let's do it in Juneau as well. So a little bit about me. My path to politics isn't very orthodox. I ran for mayor of Anchorage when I was 19 years old to address the important issues and to encourage my friends to vote and get out and participate in government. The guy who won, I don't know if you've heard of Mark Begich, he hired my punk teenage self to work in city government on the things I was passionate about. And so it's his leadership and mentorship that really brought me from being just kind of an outside activist from a working class labor family that's very non-political to the activist and person I am today. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of my career working across party lines to get things done. And I learned that from some of my mentors. You know, in the Begich administration, we worked with the business community to bring curbside recycling to Anchorage. We helped get phase 1 of Fire Island wind turbines funded and advocated for in Juneau. I was a staffer. I went from working there to being a staffer to the late Senator Johnny Ellis, who is a big mentor and friend of mine. And absolutely, here's to Johnny. And he taught me how to work across the aisle to get things done in Juneau. And as his staffer, we worked with Kevin Meyer to get paid sick leave across the Senate and many other big priorities. Since then, I went from there to being government relations director for students at UAA, and we worked with Sean Parnell, the governor at the time, to get the Alaska Performance Scholarship Plan funded, $400 million for high school students to stay in Alaska, go to college here, and hopefully build their careers here too. I went from there to helping start the Alaska Food Policy Council. I'm the Alaska-grown candidate in this race. I love Alaska-grown foods. We just did a questionnaire for the Food Policy Council this morning, which is great. But we need more investment in our local small businesses. And I worked across party lines then with Bill Stoltz, who was in charge of the capital budget, to get $3 million for local food in schools. And that was such a huge boost for farmers who knew if they increased production, they would have a market for those local foods as well. That's how we grow our economy. So I'm proud of all this bipartisan effectiveness, but I know when we need to stand up and fight those special interests. And as Angel was saying, we were fighting in the trenches. As soon as Senate Bill 21 passed in 2013, so many of us knew that would bring devastation and bankruptcy to our state. And that's exactly what we have seen. And I'm proud of being on the right side of history on fights like that. And we've spent $20 billion of our state's savings since SB 21 was passed. And what do we have to show for it? We have an out-migration. We have a crisis with energy. We have a crisis with education not being fully funded and long-term funded. I have other examples of standing up to special interests in West Anchorage. We stood up to the airport in their big interest to stop the expansion of the runway that would ruin the coastal trail, because we think that the coastal trail is a good part of our quality of life and should be protected. I have other examples of, I helped run 2 statewide initiatives to stop the Pebble Mine, and I'm very proud of the support. Thank you. And I'm very proud of the support I have from the people in Bristol Bay who are supporting my campaign. And I have recent examples as well. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Alaska Landmine, or Jeff Landfield and his blog, conservative blog, but he's recently attacked me for the 2 things I'm actually most proud of in my campaign, for being bipartisan and having the support from the Alaskans who are fighting for a fair share of our natural resources. And as you heard from Representative Galvin, you can't get things done without working across the aisle. Our challenges are too big, and it's too important to get lost in partisan politics and squabbling. We have to build the coalition, and that's my goal, is to build a coalition, a veto-proof coalition that's gonna get things done. And that's a little bit about my leadership. I'm not just gonna push a red or green button. I'm going to organize, use my skills as a political organizer to build the support it takes to get those things passed. And as was mentioned, we lost education by 1 vote. 1 vote. And not only that, the pension reform, 1 vote in committee. We are so close to being able to turn the tide and get a lot of these things accomplished, and I want to be part of the solution in Juneau. And so since then, I've worked for a lot of great people. I'm really proud of working for Senator Bill Wachowski as a staffer. The governor actually just signed one of the pieces of laws I carried as a legislative aide, the community solar bill. a community energy bill that allows people who don't necessarily have wind or solar at their house to still subscribe to a project and benefit from it. I think that's a step in the right direction. But I want to talk specifically about why I'm running in the specific instances of education and how that vote happened. So my 9-year-old daughter is at Turnagain Elementary School, and her 3 favorite programs were on the chopping block this year: Arts and Choir, the Ignite special gifted program, and the language immersion program that she's in. All 3 it's her favorite reasons for going to school. I'm so proud of her. She not only spoke at the school board, but she hand wrote letters to lawmakers, came with me on one of my trips to deliver those letters, and she even spoke at the Anchorage caucus meeting in a room full of 200 people and a wall of 20 legislators. And her message was clear: do the right thing regardless of what the governor thinks. She said it better than I think any of us. But they didn't do that, right? We were not only one vote short. I learned about some of the special interests that whipped 3 of the votes against education the morning of that vote. And to tell you I was disgusted and outraged would be an understatement. And as soon as I heard about how this came about, I was headed back home from Juneau on the airplane, and I looked up my opponent, Carolyn, who's the other candidate in the race, and I said, I gotta meet her. I don't know her. I need somebody who's gonna go to Juneau and fight for my family and stand up against these special interests that are not only bankrupting our state, but mortgaging our future for short-term profits. And I had a great conversation with Carolyn. We support a lot of the same things, but the difference is her plan and willingness to take on what needs to be taken on in our budget, and that's negotiating a fair deal and a fair share for our natural resources. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not be able to fund education and support our economy without having all solutions on the table. And the only interest that has not been on the table these last 10 years is the issue with oil taxes. And so I want to talk a little bit about the 3 kind of main issues about why I'm running. We talked about education, and it's critical. I mean, I challenge anybody, show me a thriving community or a thriving economy that doesn't have quality schools across the country. That's a bedrock of that, and we need that in Anchorage as well. We used to be one of the best school districts in the country, and we deserve to give the support that our teachers and our kids need to be successful. With the budget, our state, it's literally headed towards bankruptcy, and you will not find many politicians or current elected officials talking about what it means. For example, the Willow Project. I'm excited that the Willow Project is being built, but did you know that it's going to cost our state $10 billion before it's revenue positive? Define a broken oil tax system, and I point to that. Should our state go bankrupt because of one project? No, but we need balance, right? We can't kick out the oil industry. We need to work with them to incentivize and share the risks of the development of these projects. The other piece of the budget is these unnecessary oil tax credits. From $800 million to $1.3 billion, depending on the price of oil, we are giving oil tax credits to the legacy oil fields that have been producing for 40 plus years. Tell me, how is that incentivizing new projects on the North Slope? How is that helping us meet the needs of our state? And the last thing I want to talk about is the S corporation loophole. There is a Texas billionaire that is refusing to pay taxes in Alaska and is getting away with it. And not only are they refusing to pay their corporate income tax, they're holding our state hostage over developing Cook Inlet natural gas. Who is standing up against Hillcorp? Who's willing to take on a special interest like that? I will tell you that not only will I do it, but I have a track record of being that person. And not only will I stand up against those special interests and offer the bold leadership, but I will help build the coalition to try to get it passed and done. And we can't crisis without getting Cook Inlet to fulfill their contractual obligations to the state of Alaska. Develop the damn natural gas already. Don't sit on it. And so this blog that I talked about that attacked me, coincidentally also attacked two other great leaders in the state, Democratic Senator Bill Wielechowski and Republican Senator Kathy Giesel, who wrote a letter asking for federal help to hold Hillcorp accountable for their leases and the issue of them taking over so much of the production, being a monopoly. Those were issues raised when Hillcorp took over. And I'll just tell you this, it's ironic that that blog, who's funded by Hillcorp, only attacks politicians and people who want to hold them accountable. That's a little suspect, right? And it's just one thing about Hildebrand, the billionaire I'm talking about in Texas. His net worth went from $4 billion before he owned any Alaska assets to $12 billion today. Is that a coincidence? Because I think, we're talking about all of the loopholes and subsidies the oil industry gets. We need to incentivize new projects. We can't give away our money for free anymore. Our state cannot afford it. And I want to give a shout out to Walter Featherly, who I heard gave a great speech here that talked about Alaska as the owner state, right? We own the oil. We own our natural resources. I carry this pocket Alaska Constitution around with me because it says it very clearly that our resources are not only owned by all of Alaskans, but they should be used for the maximum benefit of everybody, right? And we are falling so short of that right now that it is scary. And what better district than West Anchorage to offer the bold leadership that we need in Juneau to get these things done, right? And I'm so proud of the support that I've received so far. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Cindy Roberts. Thank you, Angel, and a lot of the other Alaskans, Robin Brenna, who have been a part of getting our fair share. But we have to fight. We can't afford to sit on our hands. And if I know that if I'm the most qualified candidate, if I have the most experience, the best resume, and the biggest coalition to address the challenges in Alaska,
And energy.
And the energy. Thank you, Oma. And the energy to get it done, then I have an obligation to at least give this race my best shot, right? To try my hardest to fight for these issues. And even if we're not successful, we are going to bring this message right to the front door of Hillcorp, right to the front door of the politicians in Juneau who are refusing to take on these big challenges, because we will not be able to address our fiscal issues without addressing the elephant in the room, and that's giving away our oil taxes right now and giving away our oil wealth. So I want to leave time for a few questions, but I also just want to talk a little bit about the primary results and kind of my path forward and why I'm optimistic. This last race, I got in this race a little late. I've been campaigning for the last 6 weeks, and the other candidate has been campaigning for 6 months. I'm being outspent, yet I have still won or tied 4 out of the 7 precincts in West Anchorage. We heard about the low turnout. We're getting 3,000 voters voted in West Anchorage a couple days ago. 10,000 voters are going to be voting in November. This race is still early, and I'm just now getting my message across to voters. And that's where I think we're at. We have a lot of momentum. I have a lot of exciting announcements for major Democratic endorsements that I'll be making very shortly. So if you'd like to stay tuned or support my campaign, I have a sign-up sheet there, and there's more information at that front table. And without some of the support in this room, we will not be able to get our message out, to fix our oil tax system, to fix our education system, address our energy crisis, and get the change that we need done in Juneau. We can't afford the status quo anymore. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and thanks for allowing me time to speak. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Mary.
Wonderful. I think I'll get Alif, will you come up? And Nick, will you stick around a little bit? We're going to have some questions. And first of all, I'm going to say, freedom! Okay. if you would, I'm gonna give you this. And,
Yep.
so nobody goes out of turn, okay?
Elise, several times you made the point of the problem is getting the bill to the floor, getting it out of committee to the floor. Are we listening to the future Rules Committee Chairwoman?
Oh, good question. So I'm not certain where I'll be. I will be in whatever position is needed. And I can't wait to serve, of course. But I will say that the past Rules Chair is in a very tight race. And I hope you all pay attention to the Craig Johnson and Chuck Kopp race. And those are the only two candidates for that particular race. He was the Rules Chair, and he didn't do very well in the primary. We'll see what happens because it's early, but I am working in that district. I'm encouraging everyone to think about that if they know anyone who is in southwest Anchorage. There's no Democrat running in that race. They are both Republican. They are both Republican. One is named Craig Johnson, and he's the one who's been the Rules Chair. He's been oddly leaning far right, and he did not let many things go to the floor, and some of the bills he changed drastically in rules, which is not done. It's very, very rare that happens. So the one who is coming in, he has served before, his name is Chuck Kopp. He's a Republican, he's a moderate Republican, and he's a champion for defined benefits. Chuck Kopp.
K-O-P-P.
K-O-P-P, yes. Yep. So, I'm pragmatic, right? I'm gonna tell you the score, the way it is. And so, for that particular seat now, it's also important to know that everything's gonna change. If we change the majority, all of those seats will move. But because he was so difficult to work with to get education what it needed, to get public servants, especially public safety officers, what they needed, there's a target on his back. And it's a good target to have on his back because he's earned it, in my opinion.
Over here.
To me.
I have a microphone.
They don't have, they should.
Oh yeah, I do. I have a form, a donation form and envelopes right there in the front, and
I believe I do have donation envelopes. My husband, Pat Galvin, I think brought them for me. Did you bring them in? Yeah, so they'll be there on the table. And for me, I just want you to know what I'm going to be leaning in with your money is youth vote. I'm hiring a very good marketer who is going to be leaning in and doing a lot of work on social media. So that's where all your money is going, is getting youth vote in. I think that's where we need to start spending some time and energy.
Okay, I just had a round for your gun. I'm not asking you a question, I'm giving you a fact. I'm just retired after 9 years working for an Air Force think tank. I'm a strategic studies guy, I study the whole world. In the entire world, there is no jurisdiction that taxes oil less than Alaska.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to comment too that it's not as though the gentleman in Texas is choosing to not pay taxes. It's that legislators have not put together a good tax system that holds them accountable. So that's on us. That's on us to do it right, and we haven't since ACES came through, which brought in about $16.7 billion. And then we quickly changed that as soon as the next governor came in. It is all politics and who's in the pocket of oil. And we gotta be careful about that.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you that he did choose to hold Cook Inlet natural gas hostage, and he's relating the two issues, that if we force him to pay the taxes like every other, like BP paid and other companies are paying, that they're not gonna be able to produce. So they're making bad choices.
Well, to be fair, he's also making fiscal decisions that any company would make. They have to answer to the shareholders. I mean, they told us point blank when we went down to visit Cook Inlet last summer. They said, I'll tell you the truth, we don't want to drill here anymore. We're getting all our money from the North Slope right now. And so we don't like being here in Cook Inlet. We're gonna finish our agreements like we promised. We'll do that. But then we're not happy being here in Cook Inlet. We're making a lot of money up north. They said that publicly to all of us who were visiting.
Is Hillcore aren't they a privately held corporation?
Yeah, they're an
So they
S-corp.
don't have shareholders.
No, it's just
Oh,
helping
pardon me, you're
1 billion
correct.
family in Texas.
They don't have shareholders, but they do answer to investors. They have public shareholders, so their bigger shareholders is who they do have a relationship, absolutely.
Okay.
Not quite the same direction.
Just a question to Nick. One of the arguments I hear from the other side is that if you charge oil companies higher tax rates, they will simply go someplace else where it's cheaper for them, and also, by the way, environmentally dirtier, because Alaska is a very expensive place to drill for.
Very practical place.
What's the reality of that argument?
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, we need to just take a step back. The special interest in oil industry has spent over $100 million in the last 10 years to convince Alaskans of that. And it's just not the case. And just as Jane, I just heard you say, there are still, Conoco has to post their quarterly profits, and they're still record-breaking quarterly profits. And we need competition. We need to hold them accountable to fulfill their lease obligations. And so if they're threatening to do that, we have to just play our role. Just as Elise said, our job isn't to represent their shareholders. Our job is to represent Alaskans, to make sure we're meeting our needs and developing our resources.
And I want to comment where you have the exact correct talking points. I'll also add, there needs to be data behind that. And the way that we have the current laws written, we don't have a lot of data to make that decision, or that set of decisions. Later after this, you're welcome to speak with he was the writer of the ACES tax law. Pat Gowman was the revenue commissioner at the time, and put that together. It's complicated. Any new tax system is complicated. They said after ACES came in, they all stopped drilling. None of that is true. There's some natural truth to that, in that the way the oil fields were, they ended up not, and it was more of a market-driven decision as to whether or not they were drilling and how much. They will use that data, though, to sell their point that they're just going to leave the state if we ask for oil taxes too high. I think there is a place for us to make sure that doesn't become true, that they don't leave the state. It is true that we need to be careful about that, but it is also true that there is this Constitution that says we must do the best we can, right in his heart. But the way to do that is to bring international analysts who know whether or not what they are saying is true. And that's the bottom line, is they have very, very good lobbyists who are paid more than any of us in this room.
It's not a surprise they have better lawyers and accountants than us too. And the complexity of our oil tax structure really leaves Alaskans in the dark. And simplifying it, adding more transparency about getting the data that we need to make those informed decisions, all of that would help us play a better role as the owners of our natural resources.
Over here.
So along those lines, why don't we, the legislature,
fund and develop a world-class petroleum economics institute at the University of Alaska that can provide us with this information in an objective, unbiased way that would work for us. That's something that we can do as a state and as a legislature. We should have done this 40 years ago, but no time like the present.
Great idea.
So it hasn't been that long ago when the revenue commissioner, actually the one who's in charge of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, came and talked here in Anchorage. And basically his message was that you need to stop listening to the noise and look at what's actually happening. Because their sovereign wealth fund is huge compared to ours. And there's a very simple reason for that. They taxed that oil wealth, and they didn't look, and they didn't worry about it. They didn't listen to the threats. Granted, it's not the same development environment that it is here in Alaska, but they made a decision as a country not to get caught up in the nonsense that we've been doing here ever since I've been here, since the early 1980s. Anyway, I'm just hoping that I agree with you guys about getting something on board here so that we do have good data to work with, because it seems like right now it's bad. It's a
And I
crap
think
shoot.
that in the industry, I think realized that it's more profitable to drill in Juneau than on the North Slope sometimes, and higher return on investment. And I'm proud to be the only candidate in the West Anchorage race talking about these issues and getting the support from a lot of our fair share leaders.
Thank you. I would think that.
If I could add to that first, Mary, sorry, I want to also comment that we handled our nest egg, so to speak, a little differently. We didn't sock it all away. And so I just want to make sure we're aware of that. It's a little bit different, the way we've handled the money. Our PFD is growing, and I think we're going to hit our dream number of 100 billion, which is amazing. But we didn't get to their numbers because early on we agreed to, and I'm not against the dividend, but I just want us to know that that was part of the way we handled things differently. And it's a nuance that we need to start thinking about and talking about because of the revenue that's shrinking and how we're going to have to be making really tough decisions soon. So I'm just giving it to you straight up, that that's something that we've done differently.
As far as encouraging the oil companies, it should be obvious that we're making a big effort to expand solar power. And in time, the oil is not going to be very profitable for the companies. And it should be obvious to them that they better produce while they can make profits from it, rather than wait till we all have found other sources of energy. And along that, in a similar line, electric cars are popular, but everybody's buying more of the kind that do both. The hybrids. But partly, I think they want the security of knowing our recharges have not always been reliable here in Alaska, and they don't know for sure that the batteries for electric cars work as well in our cold weather. And we need more information on that, and possibly the car companies can provide us that, and maybe somebody else can provide the recharges. The state should be aware of that. But solar cars are a big answer, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I say as a fourth generation Alaskan. My family's been here before. Oil is flowing down the pipeline, and we'll be here after. And in the meantime, we need to get the best deal possible, and then also look to the future, to what our economy is going to look like in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And if you look at Texas, all these other oil states, they're posting record profits, record revenues, and they're taking care of their citizens just fine. We need to be in that same boat.
Yeah, that's true. I also wanted to comment that the transition from whatever energy we're using now to something of the future that's renewable is going to happen. It's slow, and it's correct that it's not as reliable presently for Alaskans. That's not to say we shouldn't have a combination of wind, solar, and I think tidal is going to come into play. Certainly our hydro is great, but it's only like for the rail belt 17%. It's not enough. So, and it's very expensive to build new. Sorry?
It works out for homes and condominiums, and I think there's is some incentive for the federal government.
Sure, absolutely. So what she commented was that there is for condominiums and for some places it makes sense. And it is true that it is a big part of the energy, but because of the infrastructure that we have in place in our homes, it's going to be natural gas for a while, that at least in Anchorage Bowl, that is going to heat our homes. We have to have whatever fits with our grid and our infrastructure within the home. So just like, I have an electric car, but I can tell you that my kids can't afford an electric car. And for me it makes sense because in Juneau, we have hydro. In Juneau, it's super cheap to recharge my car, so I got it mainly to have for there. In Anchorage, it's more complicated. It's not as reliable all the time, etc. But we're getting there. It's going to come, and it's going to make sense for the market for us to have that as an opportunity. We can't shut that away because we want to please the oil companies. It's something that has to stay on our menu as we are transitioning. It's just happening naturally. That's what is smart. And in the lower 48, it's even smarter because it makes sense and it's a lot easier to have it reliably. And they have grids and other things that are intertied together to make it easier for that transition to be even faster. It's tricky because in Alaska, we don't want the oil just for us, obviously, right? It's mainly to make money. To make revenue to pay for our roads, to make revenue to pay for our churches and our schools and our hospitals. So, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but we've got to come up with another revenue source other than oil. The question is, can we market solar? I don't know that we can market solar out of Alaska. We're gonna have to find something else. Maybe it's rare minerals or whatever, but we got some work to do. Right? And that means being smart about it at the table.
So I gotta get running pretty quick here, but I just wanted to thank everybody one more time for coming out and allowing me an opportunity to speak. Oh, Pete.
I just wanted a quick question. One of the companies out in Cook Inlet that says they could produce a lot more natural gas if they could get a loan from Ada. They could double their production, they said. And so I'm wondering what your ideas about that is. How can we get that to fruition? Thank you.
It's my fourth bullet point on the budget that I didn't talk about is oversight and accountability of some of these state departments. And Ada is sitting on $1.3 billion of assets and is not being accountable to the Alaskan people for doing what their mission is. So Pete, thank you for saying that. It's one of my pillars of how we fix our budget issues, is making sure our state government's working for us and not for political favors and special interests.
Okay, last question?
I have one comment, and that is that since Senate Bill 21 was repealed in 2013, and since we failed with the Alaska Fair Share Act, we have exported, the citizens of the state of Alaska have given $1 billion a year from the treasury of the state of Alaska right back to the oil industry. We have failed to fulfill the responsibility to manage the resources on behalf of all the citizens of Alaska. And I know it's a very, very challenging political process to try to change the oil structure of Alaska, but I do know that what they want is for you to be very, very afraid. Be afraid that they're going to take their ball and go home, and let me tell you, we still have the resources and we are still in the game. And so we have already contributed significantly to the oil industry's success in Alaska.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
I want to give a hand to our presentation here. I totally agree. The oil companies are not going to go anywhere. The deal they get here is incredible, even if we cut it in half. So, with that, I thank you, Elise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, everybody.
We
I'm going to take a quick selfie. Thank you.
Okay, Cal has a couple of things he wants to know.
Thank you to our presenters for sure. The excitement continues. September the 6th is coming soon. The gala, the fundraiser.